Welcome to Orange Coast Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Joel Wiltshire, and I am your worship associate today. I'm joined by Reverend Sian Wiltshire, our minister, Steve and Susan leading our music, and Karen Magoon Pearson, who is our director for religious education for children and youth. We all welcome you this morning. We are not joined by Karen Magoon Pearson, our director of religious education for children and youth. She will be here. All right. We would like to recognize the many volunteers that have helped put this service together today. We respectfully recognize that our church property rests on Ahachiman and Tongfa land. As Unitarian Universalists, we have many different beliefs, but we are one loving community. We are bound together not by a common set of rules or beliefs, but rather a covenant. A covenant is a promise that whatever our beliefs, we accept one another and encourage each other in spiritual growth. We affirm that all life has inherent value and that all existence is interconnected. We strive for justice and compassion in our deeds and relationships. We are committed to creating a welcoming community without regard to the traits that sometimes divide people. To our roomers, we invite you to silence your cell phones. For our Zoomers, we invite you to say hello in the chat. And I'd like to extend a special welcome to visitors. If you are seeking a spiritual home, we hope you'll find it here. Later in the service, we'll have an opportunity for you to introduce yourself if you'd like to do so. We began our worship with the lighting of our chalice, and this morning I'd like to invite Elisabeth Kilcher to light our chalice. Apologies for my pronunciation. She has been a member for 22 years. She has raised both her children in this church, which I don't know if they're here. And she is very grateful to be a member of this congregation.
And I can light it with my right hand. Two arms.
Is the spirit of this church, and service is its law, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth and love, and to help one another. This we affirm together. Please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing our opening song.
Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whoever you love, we welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whoever you love, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whoever you love, we welcome you. We welcome
In a world that feeds on moral outrage, we are here to cultivate moral courage. In a time that prizes picking sides, we gather to draw a wider circle. And in a culture that teaches us to ask, what's in it for me? We come to practice generosity of spirit and to remember that we're all in this together.
ancient anthems from afar. Silence below, bird song in the sky. Joyful with harmony sing we all the way home with a song in my heart. All the way home. Brighten my path and carry me on. All the way
Now I'd like to invite Wendy Karn, our intern minister, up here to do our Time for All Ages.
Good morning, everyone. Today, I'm going to tell you a true story. It's the story about where this chalice and flame came from. So it starts back over 80 years ago. There was some pretty bad people living in Germany at the time. And not to say that everyone in Germany was bad, that certainly wasn't true, but the people running the country at the time were the Nazis, and they were not good people. They thought that anyone differing from themselves, whether it be religion or any other kind of choice that wasn't in line with what they thought was bad, that's what they really thought. So it really did scare a lot of people because some of these people were getting killed in order to not be there anymore to compete with them. So it scared a lot of people, rightfully so. And you may know one story of Anne Frank. Anne Frank and her family were Jewish, and they were very different from these Nazis. And she and her whole family hid from them, and there's a story about it if you haven't read that yet. Many people wanted to leave, but they were afraid they would be caught trying to escape. So there was a lot of people helping, but it was really difficult to do that. So we're going to talk about two people that were really big helpers, Martha and Wetzel Sharp. Both of these were Americans, Unitarians like us. They didn't like what was going on. They thought the Nazis were really doing something bad, and they thought we really, really need to help. We're all different, every single one of us, and everyone has a right to be here. So we're going to help these people escape. No one in Germany really knew them, and the people hiding didn't know if they could be trusted because they were strangers. But Martha and Wetzel had a friend named Hans, and he was an artist who had spoken out by way of drawing cartoons about the Nazis. And well, when they found out, he had to run for his life. So when they heard that they wanted to help others escape, he wanted to also. So he told them, you know, we really need to make some kind of symbol so that people know that they can trust us and who else they can trust. So a symbol makes people feel courageous to fight against injustice, and a symbol to remind us to be kind and compassionate to one another. So Hans came up with a chalice. If you don't know what a chalice is like a cup, something you can drink out of, or, oh, hey, there's a chalice right here. A chalice is something that we can get behind that is a symbol about being compassionate and loving and kind. And he also said, I'd like to add a flame, like a beacon of light, so that people know they are among friends when they're around this symbol or whenever they see it. The warmth of community, the beacon of hope, and a light of truth was present in their home. And so Hans created the symbol of the chalice and the flame. It's like the one we light every morning at our services. And all other Unitarian Universalist congregations also light this chalice within their communities and within these Sundays. And they say different words. Everybody has a different looking chalice. If anybody has a chalice at home, it's likely it may not look like this one. We have many different looking chalices just within this room and within the walls behind us, but they all say the same thing. So it's important to remember that we're all connected, even when it doesn't feel like we are. And one of the symbols of our heritage and our courage and our beacon of light is this chalice that we light every week. And with that, I would like to invite Karen up to light our children's chalice for the day.
So as many of you know, we have 7 principles and 6 sources, and the 6 sources basically is a list of all the different ways in which we find wisdom in the world. Well, back in 2008, so it was a while back ago, there was a proposal before our denomination to modify the principles and sources in general. But one of the proposals was the sentence about the sources. And it said, "Grateful for the traditions that have strengthened our own, we strive to avoid misappropriation of cultural and religious practices and to seek ways of appreciation that are respectful and welcomed." Now, Reverend James Ford, who many of you know, he actually lives in the area, is a wonderful colleague of mine. He wrote a blog post about this particular proposal, this sentence. And for those of you who don't know Reverend James Ford, let me give you a little bit of his social location. So first of all, he is a widely admired, ordained Unitarian Universalist minister. He's white, he's hetero, he's male, and he's also a Roshi. And a Roshi is a Zen master in Buddhism, in the Buddhist tradition. And he has been ordained by other Buddhists in this. So he sort of straddles these two worlds. He has his own what's called a Sangha, which is kind of like a church of its own. So he has Buddhism and Unitarian Universalism. So I tell you this so you understand the perspective he's coming from in the blog that he wrote, which is the following. It was about this sentence. He says, "This proposed sentence seems innocuous enough, and on the face of it seems a generous attempt to engage the cultures and religions of the world from a respectful stance. And I believe the authors of this draft are indeed writing from that generous spirit. I have no argument with the spirit it seems to wish to promote. But here's the problem as I see it. The issue of cultural and religious misappropriation has been on the table in Unitarian Universalist circles for years. The argument turns on who has the right to use the rituals and symbols of another religion or culture. The deeper question seems to be how can the dominant or white culture assimilate the rituals and symbols of oppressed peoples? The question is considerably, and to my mind, fatally muddled by multiple layers of concern that are carried within the rubric cultural misappropriation. For example, some claim a necessary, sometimes even genetic connection to specific practices and even ways of thinking. They assert if you're not of the original faith community, you have no right to those practices or even spiritual perspectives. Ultimately, this is a seeking of religious purity. More importantly, this argument extends beyond indigenous cultures to include world religions, and in the process presents what I find to be a complete misunderstanding of what a world religion is and its relation to any given culture. He continues, quoting a UU minister, Marjorie Bowens-Wheatley, as he says, she writes, "There is probably no such thing as a pure religion or pure culture. To some extent, we all appropriate culture. Since time immemorial, religions have borrowed from each other. Judaism was shaped in part by encounters of the ancient Hebrews with the Sumerians and Zoroastrians, the Babylonians and the Egyptians. Similarly, Christianity is rooted in the Jewish tradition. Islam begins with both Jewish and Christian traditions, and so on. And specifically, our contemporary Unitarian Universalism has strong eclectic and syncretic threads. There have already been powerful and compelling consequences to this inclination toward eclecticism and syncreticism, that is, the merging of different religions and cultures or schools of thought. For instance, somewhere between 10 to 20% of Unitarian Universalists now consider Buddhist perspectives, at least to some degree, as a significant part of their Unitarian Universalist identity. I think those who have expressed concerns with cultural misappropriation ask some important questions we need to explore. Among those questions, he says, are who decides what is authenticity? What defines racial and cultural identity? What is appropriate and what is misappropriate in adopting or borrowing rites and symbols? And intriguingly, what is the intent? And finally, how can cultural traditions that are not our own be honored, respected, appreciated, affirmed, and respectfully shared? So today I'm going to attempt to answer those questions. I'm going to attempt at any rate, but I wanted to give you a chance to think about some of those questions yourself. So I want to invite you into that time of meditation to maybe just soften your eyes and just close your eyes for a moment and think about maybe just even this one last question. Take some deep breaths. Can cultural traditions that are not our own be honored, respected, appreciated, affirmed, and respectfully shared? When you're ready, please join the choir in singing this Buddha Sutra that was put to music by a Unitarian Universalist minister.
May
So earlier this year, boy, it was 9 months ago, on January 22nd, if you don't know that date, it was the Lunar New Year. Many of us might refer to it as the Chinese New Year, but it's actually many different countries and cultures celebrate it, so it's really a Lunar New Year. A few weeks after that date, I had preached on that date, and a few weeks later, one of our long-term friends, Patrick, who is of Vietnamese American descent, he asked me, so why didn't you say anything about the Lunar New Year on that day? He said, I didn't expect a whole service, but it would have been nice if you had acknowledged this really huge event in Chinese culture. Now, I did kind of know that it was the Lunar New Year, but I chose not to say anything. I was speaking on something very different that day, and I didn't think, honestly, that it would fit into the service, or maybe that I couldn't really work it in, and it just kind of slipped out of my mind. And I had no idea that this neglect might cause some harm to someone. And that's what it means to be sort of culturally ignorant and only thinking from a European American perspective. You know, we often refer to ourselves as a predominantly white denomination, usually with sort of feelings of kind of embarrassment, like, But predominantly doesn't mean everyone, okay? We have many people of many different cultures and religious beliefs in our churches. So how can I, as the minister, as the spiritual leader of this congregation, ensure that everyone, no matter what their background is, feel comfortable and welcome in this space here? And what responsibility do I have to ensure that we don't offend or upset people from that culture or religion? Does one person in the congregation speak for all in that culture? Do they get to give permission, as it were, to invite all of those who are different from them to celebrate this cultural event? So this is some wonderful pictures about things that go on in the festival. Oh, that's right, I forgot. No, this actually does go later. That's right. So one thing to know is that actually starting on Friday is another very special holiday, which is the Moon Festival. Okay? And in fact, there's a big celebration here in Orange County on Saturday if you would like to go learn more about it. But this is something that Eastern and Southeastern cultures have a lot of fun, and they eat mooncakes and they do all sorts of really fun stuff. So I thought it would be good to do it. I'm not preaching next weekend, so I thought, oh, okay, I'll do it this weekend. So I want to acknowledge, first of all, that it is the Moon Festival going on. But do we get to celebrate it? Well, there's this really interesting meme that I have to admit, I really love this meme that's been going around the internet. The first one, I'll read it out loud for those of you who can read it for yourself. A woman named Cassie, who is a Chinese American, tweeted, friendly reminder that you don't get to celebrate Lunar New Year unless you're literally from a country that does, or if you're invited by someone who is from a country that does. And Andy, a fellow Chinese American, then tweeted back, friendly reminder that I hereby formally invite everyone to celebrate the Lunar New Year. Now, the funny thing about this, in both cases, like no one person can speak for all people, right? Like, this is kind of a funny, you're never going to get everyone to agree about what's appropriate or what's not appropriate, right? We definitely like that sense of being invited in, and we want to be invited in. People have different understandings of these things. Some see it as misappropriation, others see it as an invitation to learn and to educate people about the culture and invite people into that. I'll have you know that every year I have a Latina colleague who posts on our Facebook ministers page that says that we cannot celebrate Dios de los Muertos in our congregations. And another colleague points out that we shouldn't do the Jewish Seder unless we are Jewish. Now, I'm neither Jewish nor Latina nor of any East Asian descent, but we have people in our congregation who identify at least as one of those. Many of them do. So do I, as their spiritual leader, ignore their cultural and religious needs simply because I'm not Jewish, Latino, or Chinese, or whatever it is, right? So as I mentioned, that this Friday on September 29th, there's a very special day for the Eastern and Southeastern cultures of these countries. It's a mid-autumn festival, the Moon Festival. And it's because I guess at this time, it's the time that the moon is actually at its fullest, brightest, roundest time. And it's a huge tradition in many cultures. I mean, like, huge tradition. As I mentioned, it's also celebrated next weekend. Now, when the families get together, they might light lanterns, they definitely eat their moon cakes, and they appreciate and ask for blessings from the moon. There's a huge, wonderful story. There's lots of different variations of the story about the moon goddess and all that sort of thing. But the biggest thing about this celebration, is about family reunions. So families come all together, all around, to get together at this time. So what if we decorated our sanctuary with lanterns? What if we had mooncakes and invited everyone to bring their families to sit under the stars here in the courtyard? It sounds really lovely, I think. What if we started singing UU hymns or Beatles songs? Can we add that to it? Is that syncretic? Is that okay? Would that be cultural misappropriation or appreciative syncreticism? I don't know. And then there are many different traditions surrounding the Moon Festival. So which one do we honor? Is it all of them? Do we kind of boil it down to just the general things that everybody kind of does? Or do we pick something specific like the Vietnamese or the Chinese or the Korean or whatever it is, or all of them? And each of them borrowed actually from the Chinese version, which is like 2,000 years old, this tradition. So is it kind of bad if we do it too? I don't know. But if we don't in some way at least acknowledge these long-held traditions in our cultures and religions, will people feel left out, right? Feel like, oh, this is a European American church. They don't want my traditions here. And by extension, they don't want me here. Do you kind of see the catch-22, right? Well, some people think, well, okay, if we're going to honor a certain tradition, then you must be in relationship with people in that tradition or have them come and speak about it. I love the internet. I looked it up. There are literally 4,000 different world religions. And even if you lump them together in like the top 12, that's still a lot. That's not counting cultures within them as well. So there are 193 different countries and obviously far more many cultures within the countries. So for example, Islam practices in Saudi Arabia are very different from Islamic practices in Singapore, for example. So can I never talk about Ubuntu theology from Southern Africa or about Zoroastrianism from Iran? Can we sing African American spirituals? What about using Sufi poetry for a reading? Can I read Sufi poetry in translation, or do I have to learn ancient Arabic? If we don't invite and welcome in all of the myriad and beautiful ways that it means to be human, don't we miss out on inviting people in? Isn't that making the circle smaller? Which of course then begs the question, can we be all things to all people? I kind of doubt it, but I also doubt that people who come to our church, who know anything about Unitarian Universalism, come like Reverend James Ford because we embrace so many different ways of being, and they just want to share their part of that as well. Now, I personally like that sentence that was proposed. Honestly, I think it's how to approach the issue of cultural misappropriation, except for I would change one of the last words, that are respectful and welcoming. Because I think that's how we invite people in of all different backgrounds, is being welcoming. And in that, we need to recognize and celebrate these differences. It means we do so without stereotypes or caricatures. We invite people to speak about it when they can, to give us a broader perspective. We don't exploit, and we do what we can to support, and even monetarily, but also through education, all of the amazing ways that we are human. Obviously, understanding cultural misappropriation, this is really kind of a very complex topic, and I feel like most of us probably know where to draw the line, and some of us might be a little fuzzy about it. You know, it was sort of interesting as I was learning more and more about this. I made a lot of assumptions. So, for example, when he said Lunar New Year, I immediately went to Chinese New Year, which made me assume that Patrick was of Chinese descent. And then I looked up the name Bui, and I was like, no, that's of Vietnamese descent. Oh, wait a minute, there are other cultures that actually celebrate. Like, I didn't even like, my mind just got expanded the more and more I researched it, which was really kind of cool. But we also need to remember that, like, we also have our own traditions that we can call our own. then they can be very welcoming to everyone. In fact, they tend to center around that concept of being very welcoming. So we've got the lighting of the chalice, which we heard about today. We've got the flower communion and our water ceremony. And these are uniquely Unitarian Universalists, and they come out of our particular history of how we came to being, just as all of the other ways of religions do as well, right? So let me give you a what if. What if we saw someone in a very conservative tradition? What if we were, I don't know, doing something with them and they said something like, well, today we invite our Unitarian Universalist brothers and sisters and worship with us. In their tradition, they light a chalice and say words of affirmation. So let us do the same. But instead of doing love is the spirit of this church, which is what we do every Sunday, right? They said instead the Nicene Creed. I believe in one God, right? Maker of heaven and earth, all things visible and invisible. I believe in one Lord Jesus Christ, our only begotten Son, yada, 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 right? How would y'all feel about that? I mean, they seem to have some good intentions. They're trying to recognize what we're doing, but they've completely missed the boat about what our chalice lighting is about. What if they asked our permission? We'd like to light a chalice. Would that be okay? Would you give it to them? What if they did use, would there's still a conservative church, what if they did use, they say, oh, love is the spirit of this church when lighting, and they said our unison affirmation. But it's still a conservative church that may not welcome everyone that we have in our churches, for example, the LGBTQ community. Would you still give permission? I probably honestly wouldn't. But it's up to you, right? Each of us are different. You might. Here's another example. Yom Kippur begins tonight, right? It's a huge Jewish holiday. It has a story, a history, and is deeply meaningful, and it's a very holy tradition with very specific rituals and prayers and music, everything behind it, most of which I honestly really don't know. I know it's the Day of Atonement, which when you're supposed to make amends for any wrongs that you have committed and confess those. Personally, I think atonement is an absolutely vital thing to talk about, but without having a rabbi here, I would not feel comfortable celebrating specifically Yom Kippur. I have absolutely no problem with mentioning it, but in no way would we call our worship service, I think, oh, come to our Yom Kippur service. But I will say that Unitarian Universalist ministers in the past have done so. So for me, we can be inspired by these traditions. I have kind of holy envy for Yom Kippur. These traditions of other cultures, right? I love this idea of family reunion and having something that's a little bit like Thanksgiving kind of idea. But we can also just simply create our own. Another example are Zen koans, which are very specific ritualistic words that are understood only in certain ways. And I find koans fascinating, but I have no idea as to their historical significance or how they're actually used. They're sort of to help you figure out where you are on your trip toward enlightenment, as I understand it. I don't know how that works. I wouldn't feel comfortable giving you a bunch of them and saying, okay, so how do you feel? But I know someone who actually has written books on it, Reverend James Ford. He's all about Zen koans. This guy named Max Warren, he was a leader in the Christian Missionary Society and a leader in respecting cultures, even when trying to convert them. He wrote this, he said, our first task in approaching another people, another culture, another religion is to take off our shoes. For the place we are approaching is holy. Else we find ourselves treading on another's dream. More serious still, we may forget that God was there before our arrival. And I love this, and even though it's from a Christian perspective, he's saying that the holy is in all religions. Peoples and cultures think God just didn't come from Christianity, but was already present in a unique way in all of these traditions. That is a very Christian perspective, but I actually agree that all of these traditions are holy. I think this issue of cultural and religious misappropriation has really about abuse of power, right? And oppression. recognizing that harm has been done in the past and it continues on in the present toward cultures and religions that were not of European or Christian descent. In the past, different cultures and religions were either treated with ignorance, maybe a kind of shallow appreciation, or downright hostility, and even genocide. I think with those particular cultures and religions, we do need to tread very, very carefully and respectfully and acknowledge that previous harm while moving forward from a place of curiosity, of healing, and of love. Sometimes it might even be saying, yeah, okay, we're not going to do that. I don't think it's about being all things to all people, but rather I think it's about finding ways and making those in your communities feel welcome, that their culture is honored and respected, whether that's through even a specific just acknowledgement or even by full celebration. It can be done in a way that honors that tradition. I do think it's important that people of a particular culture or religious background take on a leadership role in that if they can, if they really want to. For example, I don't lead the Seder service. People of Jewish descent in this congregation do so, and they invite everyone to join them. I don't know that celebration, I'm not Jewish, but I trust those that do. They do a wonderful job. And others say, well, you have to be in relationship with the culture to have anything to do with it. So for example, James Ford, as I said, is a Roshi, and he can talk and lead Buddhist rituals, but I love Buddhism. I'm one of those 10-20% where it informs a lot of my own faith tradition. I draw a great deal of wisdom from it, but I also rarely meditate, right? Which is the Buddhist practice, spiritual practice, and I encourage our meditation group, certainly. But Buddhists haven't experienced as much oppression as, say, the Jewish people. And moreover, they see themselves as very welcoming world. They want everybody to know about them because it's all about love and compassion, right? And they want to spread that. They recognize that different peoples and different cultures will adapt Buddhism to their culture, and the vast majority, I've never met a Buddhist who hasn't been okay with us singing that song that we did or any of those types of things. So long as their general tenets, which is the Four Noble Truths, are honored and respected, they're cool. To them, it's all about love. It's all about compassion. I think that we Unitarian Universalists, we can get caught up in this sort of either or, all or nothing kind of thinking. So I do think that, yes, you can talk about atonement even on the day of Yom Kippur, but no, you really shouldn't call it your Yom Kippur service, especially if you're not Jewish. And yes, I think you can have a moon festival celebration and serve moon cakes, so long as you educate people about the importance of this holiday and why we're having them. And yes, I brought moon cakes today. So we'll have them out there. And there's also these little cute little bunny cookies as well. Bunnies, there's a whole story around the bunnies and the moon goddess and everything like that. We'll tell that as a time for all ages at some point. So like James Ford, however, one of the reasons why I became a Unitarian Universalist, and I'm guessing why many of you became a Unitarian Universalist, is that you wanted to explore the many different ways of thinking and being in this world. I wanted to expand my mind, which then expands also my heart. If we shut down and only acknowledge and celebrate those services that are part of our European and Christian heritage, and don't welcome in other ways of being, I think we fail as Unitarian Universalists. Our faith tradition respects the dignity and worth of all people, and that's how we approach all of this, right? We find wisdom in all these traditions, even within ourselves. And I think that those two things can walk hand in hand if we're careful and loving and welcoming and respectful. I also think we need to be gentle with one another, right? We're not always going to agree on this. I told Wendy, and I'll tell you, look, if you disagree with the sermon that I'm having, or you think, oh, there's a nuance you missed here, feel free to come up and tell me. I don't have all the answers up here, but I'm struggling with this as maybe some of you are as well. But we need to be gentle with one another, and we may make mistakes. It turns out, as I mentioned, the mooncakes that I got, well, it turns out they're Japanese mooncakes, not Vietnamese or Chinese, so sorry, Patrick. But now I know better. And if someone feels hurt by what we do or what we don't do, let's just listen. Let's just hear that pain and see if we can find a way of understanding and acknowledgement or even of celebration. You know, we humans, we have this tendency to build these barriers to say who's in and who's out. I think to be truly welcoming to all, I and we can lovingly listen and be curious. We can invite new ways of being along the way, learn and grow and become the welcoming people I think that we are. And to me, that is what it means to answer the call of love. So let us sing.
Unitarian Universalist congregations are fully self-supporting, meaning that members and friends raise all funds for the operating budget, ministries, and programs of the church. We are ever grateful for your gifts of time, treasure, and talent. OCUC amplifies that spirit of generosity by sharing one half of the plate we receive with an organization that shares our values. And this month we're supporting Stand Up for Kids. Okay, good, I read it right. OCUC amplifies that spirit of generosity. Please look away for a moment. There are multiple ways in which you can support the church and this organization. You can mail a check, you can go through our website, or use an app called Vanco Mobile. If you are a roomer, you can also simply use the basket as it is passed. The choice is yours. All the information is on our website should you need it. As always, thank you for your generosity.
Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle wide. the circle, draw the circle wide.
Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle
All right. I'm here to tell the choir to all stand back up again because we're singing another song, We Gather Together, which will put our intentions into words, expresses our gratitude for the many gifts we share. You too, embody your spirit, please.
Peace, love, and justice for everyone. We give from our hearts to show that we care. We can change lives with what we share.
Ah, the place of power that is the pulpit. Thank you. So well, now is that time when we honor important events and people in our lives, and you're invited, one and all, whether you're a member, friend, visitor, remember everyone is welcome, whether a roomer or a Zoomer, hi Zoomers, to participate in our weekly ritual called Joys and Sorrows. So I'd like to begin by inviting Judith Stamper up here. She's one of our pastoral care team members. She's going to assist us. So if you came here today holding something close to your heart, any moments from the last days, weeks, or hours that may have struck you at your core, if you'd like to honor such a profound joy or sorrow, we invite you to come forward and to light a candle. Now, if you're a roomer, you can just simply come forward to light your candle. If you'd like to share that joy or sorrow, you can write it on a slip of paper, which a bunch of people have given me already, and then hand it to me once you've written it out, and then we will read them out loud in a little bit. So the ushers are standing around. If you would like to raise your hand, if you would need one, by all means, let them know. Now, if you're a Zoomer, you can invite it to write your joy or sorrow in the chat over here, and then Judith will light a candle for you. And once the roomers are done lighting their candles, I'll read all of those joys and sorrows out loud. All right, as music is played, I invite you to silently offer healing or celebration as you feel called and according to your own beliefs. Please come forward. see, Marquez. All right, online, our Zoomers, we've got two Joys and one I think probably many of us will share. If we can see, if you want to see the Zoomers after the service, you can say hello on this iPad over here. Sarah J., who's our administrator, she says, great, great joy to see Paul and Clover together this morning. Love my dear friends. So they're there on Zoom. So wonderful. For those of you who don't know, Clover and Paul, Clover recently fell and they're in a home together. They're longtime members, beloved members of this congregation. So let's see here. And then Matthew, he has a joy. He says he got to spend Friday and yesterday visiting with his mother and brother in Fairview, Utah. There was a lot of emotion as we delved into memories of his dad, passed away. And it was overall a wonderful weekend. He says, I'm in Beaver, Utah, traveling to St. George for the night and will be back home tomorrow. Sarah J. Also had a joy. She said, a child from the elementary school in my neighborhood went missing on Friday. She was found by the police safe and sound within 3 hours. Ooh, blessings, yeah, indeed. And Patrick, I love it. Patrick, he would light a candle that he says, thanks for recognizing Mid-Autumn Moons Festival and thanks for the moon cakes. He says, there are many varieties. My childhood favorite was the white chewy ones or the triple egg center. Good to know, yeah. All right, they did try to talk me into a bunch of others. I was like, I don't know. All right, so in here in the room, we had a number of other wonderful joys being sent out. So Marquez M., he lit a candle of joy because he says, it's my birthday is soon turning 19 on the 28th. So happy early birthday. And Julie C., she says, she lit a candle of joy because she says, wow, the choir sounds amazing. She says, well done, they did, they sound wonderful. So, oh, and happy Fayed. There you go. I didn't even know it was Fayed. See this? Oh, happy fall. Oh, see, I didn't even know it was that, okay. Happy fall, yes. Is it fall now? Is it really? Wow, that's why it's Mid-Autumn Festival. Yeah, okay, getting it. Okay. Slow but trainable, okay. And Dolly D, she lit a candle of joy, or she had a candle, if you could light a candle of joy for Dolly. Dolly was pleased to be able to attend the Interfaith Council lunch and discussion last Wednesday. She invites all of us to join her, and details will be in the blast. The Interfaith Council, they do some really wonderful things. They had a whole thing on refugees on Wednesday, and I was sorry I couldn't make it. And then Joanne V. Says that she lit a candle because her condo remodel finally got finished yesterday after 3 months. Yes, we all know that, really, right? Yeah, many of us do. All right, well done, Joanne. And Ralph H., he lit a candle specifically in gratitude for Maureen for showing him what I can learn about love from watching animals interact. And Alejandro lit a candle of joy. He says, to my dog Pucker, who brings me incredible joy, a now 12-year-old Cocker Spaniel that was gifted to me by my mother at 3 months. Aww, I'm a dog person. That's awesome. And Francie C., she lit a candle of joy because her daughter Sabrina Mayhew from Michigan was honored in a cover story at cancertoday.com in their magazine's fall issue for her fundraising and research in breast cancer solutions. She's also a healthy survivor of breast cancer herself. She's doing amazing work out there. Grateful for those scientists, I tell you. And Jolene, she lit a candle of joy for Chance. And can we give Chance a hand for doing that? Welcome. Solo. Great. Where did Chance go? Gotcha, he went out, yeah. So Chance she says, Chance also played awesome guitar yesterday at his School of Rock season ender. Thanks for today for Steve and Susan for asking Chance to join and draw the circle wide as he did when he was 8 years old. Isn't that sweet? Nice. And Linda S. reminds us that there are Ukrainian photographs. They're a beautiful exhibit that we just finished hanging in the lobby. Go take a look. So we have, as many of you know, that we have these Ukrainian refugees living here. And at one point, one of them, she's moved on to her own apartment now, but she is a National Geographic photographer. And as part of our Environmental Film Festival coming up next Saturday, we're having this wonderful exhibit of photographs for her. So that's more of an announcement, but please go check them out. They're beautiful. They're absolutely gorgeous. Okay, I think, let's see. Oh, and I also, could you light a candle as well for Phyllis Daniel? I forgot that there was one that was sent ahead of time. So for those of you who know Phyllis, she says, I say, please light a candle of healing for Phyllis, who had hip replacement surgery this week. But I tell you, she was up and walking on the first day and is now home. It's amazing what they can do. So, amen. So let us hold and love all these joys and celebrations and all the hurts and sadness, whether or not they were spoken or if they're just held silently in our hearts. Let our joys remind us to be thankful, our concerns remind us to hope, and our sorrows remind us to connect with one another. Let all these moments remind us that we're not alone. There are people here with us. Please join Judith in a spirit of prayer.
These are words by Andre Moll, adapted from their words, and it was written in honor of the Sharps who, as we heard during Time for All Ages, came up with the idea of the chalice. As we gather together, may we remember when you share with me what is most important to you, that is where listening begins. When I show you that I hear you, when I say your life matters, that is where compassion begins. When I open the door to greet you, that is where hospitality begins. When I venture out to bring you to shelter, that is where love begins. When I risk my comfort to ease your suffering, when I act against hatred, violence, and injustice, that is where courage begins. When we experience the full presence of each other because of our shared humanity, because of our differences, that is where our holy gratitude begins. Amen.
All right, please rise in body or in spirit. No, sit down. This thing is powerful. All right, Reverend Sean is keeping me in check. No more of that. Let us join together as we extinguish the flame of our chalice and say together, we extinguish our chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you for joining us this morning. We are a congregation made of people who all believe differently. And yet, when we gather together, whether we are in the room or on Zoom, we make up one loving community. We need not think alike to love alike. If you are a guest, a visitor, or someone who hasn't yet been known to us, I invite you to become a part of this beloved community. We encourage you to either write in the chat if you are a Zoomer, or if you're a roomer, to stand for a brief moment and tell us your name and where you are from. No trick this time. All right. Well, if you'd like to know more about our church, including programming for our youth and children, please contact us at hello@ocuc.org and we'll help you get connected. In addition, we invite you to sign up for our weekly email called The Blast at blast@ocuc.org. We want everyone to feel a part of this beloved community, so please reach out.
Of course, we have announcements. As I mentioned, there is the Wild and Scenic Environmental Film Festival in Daniels Hall. Tickets are on sale now. You've all got your tickets, right? I'm going to come back here next Saturday. There's a the one who's actually selling the ticket, she's saying no. So go see Meg out there. There's actually a wonderful table out there and everything. There's a matinee at 2 o'clock, or you can do the evening one at 6 o'clock. It's going to be absolutely wonderful. I've heard wonderful things about the various little short films that we show are absolutely fabulous. It's a great way to do it. And then actually also on Thursday, if you'd like to come to see and support Irina with her pictures, her beautiful pictures. We're going to have kind of a wine and cheese kind of gathering to look at it. And the pictures, I believe, are going to be on sale, and each one has a story behind it. And there's a little thing you can use your phone to actually see the story behind it by clicking on what are those things called? Yeah, QR code. Thank you. I am here, really. Let's see here. So, and then we also need some bakers, it looks like, for cookies and brownies to sell at the film festival. So if you are a baker and you love baking, please do see also Meg for that. So we've got lots of things that are going on and some things that are going to be coming up. We got our women's circle today as well, and the auction is coming up as well. If you know what auction items you like to do, see the beautiful woman in the orange hat and orange dress, and she will help you understand it. We'll do some more announcements and fun stuff around that. Yeah, it's November 4th, and it's November 4th. All right, I just want to leave you with these last words. In the Moon Festival, people often say a little prayer that, as I'm using the translation of this is a very common one, that says, may your loved ones stay with you forever, so that when you share the moonlight together, no matter where you are, in the same place or not. May this place be a home for all those who seek it. Amen. Let us join in singing our wonderful song that sends us out with joy in our hearts.
Let's go out and all to our heart. Let's go out, bring joy to each heart. Let's go out with indifference destroyed. Let us go out with joy. Let's go out and all to our heart. Let us go out. Bring joy to each heart, let's go out. With indifference destroyed, let us go out with joy. Let us go out with joy. Let us go out with
This service is over and mooncakes will be served outside.